Kakumiro district in Bunyoro sub-region has a peculiar history. A place scarred by upheaval, Kakumiro was carved out of Buyaga and Buganga is the lost counties.
The Omukam of Bunyoro comes from his kingdom, which lies between Acholi, Lango and Buganda.
Flashpoints of Uganda's post-independence history. During the Luero Bush struggle, President Museveni and his acolytes found the forested depths of Kakumiro a safe haven from the enemy force. Today there's a highway under construction connecting Hoima to Mubende, cutting through the rural landscape of Kakumiro. A few electricity poles dot the dirt roads to supply power to backwaters. But since the announcement of the construction of the much vaunted East African crude oil pipeline
in Uganda, that will be Hoima, Chankwanzi, Kakumiro, Mubende, Gomba, Sembabule, Lwengo, Rakai and Kyotera,
which will cost $3.55 billion, fear has gripped communities in its path.
They told us not to plant perennial crops. In that way, they gave us cut-off date, which I don't remember very well, but it even elapsed. And actually, we're asking ourselves, what should we do?
These PAPs others were forced to sign on those evaluation forms. Others signed without knowing what they are signing for because things are written in English and they couldn't transform for them into their local languages. And others, they used the other tactics such that they could sign, showing that they are hurrying, so they were hurried to sign.
The companies and government communicated to communities to stop using land, especially for permanent structures or growing of perennial crops. And the thought was that the acquisition of land was going to be expedited, so within 6 months, land would be acquired, people would be compensated and resettled, those who wanted to be resettled. But that has not happened. What is putting people on pressure, both landowners and users, is that one, they don't know when they're going to be compensated. Two, no one is telling them whether they'll be compensated actually or not.
Thousands of families are supposed to be relocated as the pipeline snakes through the Albertine, stretching for 900 miles to Tanzania's port of Tanganyika in Indian Ocean. The pipeline, one of the longest in the world, will carry 216,000 barrels of crude oil a day and will require heating to 50 degrees Celsius because the oil is low in sulfur. There are fears that the carbon footprint of the oil, once burned, will leave a trail of destruction as thousands of farmers will lose their land. There are also fears that it could rupture rich biodiversity and wildlife habitats. The pipeline will be buried to a depth of up to 2 meters for most of its journey, but will leave a footprint on the landscape.
There came an organization, environmental social impact assessment. They talked to us about environmental plans and some mitigation measures. But the mitigation measures, they told us, we are actually not sure whether they will be done, because we tried to use the knowledge they told us at first, which has gone on changing, and we assume that the mitigation measures they told us even may actually not happen. So we are requesting any organization which can help us to come in and give us some guidelines.
It will require more than 80% control stations along the route for pumping, managing pressure, isolating potential leaks, and keeping the oil heated. There's also a requirement that a 30-meter wide corridor of land above the pipeline is kept clear of buildings, trees and crops, which will disrupt farms, ecosystems and wildlife migration. Beside the disturbance to wildlife habitat and farming, an additional threat is pollution from oil leaks. Before construction commences, locals in Mpassana sub-county are not sure whether they will be compensated adequately. Many have halted activities, including farming and construction in the land where the pipeline will travel through. This woman lives on this expansive piece of land where she does cultivation and grazes livestock. Her husband, who previously engaged the farms in charge of compensation, recently died. She can't read and write and has tasked her daughter to follow up on the compensation.
They valued part of the property. When I asked about the kitchen, they said someone else will value that. They wanted us to sign the agreement in English, which I don't understand, and the documents are in the names of my late husband.
Many locals in this area claim their properties and crops were not properly valued.
I wrote a letter which I handed to them. They called me and I raised my concerns. I told them I did not agree with them. The pipeline is meant to pass through my compound.
The COVID-19 pandemic has further dampened the mood and locals fear for the worst.
Because with COVID, companies have pulled out of the communities. You don't hear much information. A lot of work has been stopped both by government and by companies. So we don't know whether land will actually be taken eventually or not. But you also know that in international market, the price of oil has gone down. And you also know that the discussion in Uganda has been more about the farm down one company to another, and the discussion on the agreement between Uganda and Tanzania. So while at the national level, we are concerned with stock markets, the shareholding, the farming down, no one is looking back to the community.
The Permanent Secretary in the Energy Ministry, Robert Kasande, acknowledges the impact of COVID-19 on the compensation process.
The resettlement action plan for the East African crude oil pipeline, as far as I'm concerned, has been moving on very smoothly. I think the approach by the consultants that were hired by Total has been a good approach. Of course, we were notified by some of the people who live in those areas that maybe Kakumiro could be one of those very difficult areas when it comes to land acquisition because of the absentee landlords. I think that's where they have plenty. And we have approached it in a way that we have sensitized the people on how we've worked, especially here in Uganda, where we've been acquiring land quite a bit.
The State Minister for Health, in charge of general duties, Robina Nabanja, who is the Kakumiro woman MP, told NTV that she will raise the matter of compensation in cabinet.
The government, you know, the challenge we have in Kakumiro is the lack of land titles. We don't own land. We are squatters. And therefore, when these people come to compensate us, they claim we don't have land. You know, the rates are different. For us, the absentee landlords who own land are not even there. So I think now that I'm a cabinet member, I've just got to cabinet and tell them, give us money. Because there is nobody who is going to claim this money. You understand what I mean? The absentee landlords are not there. Some of them don't even know that they have land titles, either in banks or what. And therefore, our people are given, in fact, peanuts, including myself, because I also don't own a land title.
We recognize a tenant, we recognize a landlord, and we recognize a chibanja holder. So I don't know if really there are any challenges. The challenges I've seen maybe are with people who are operating in gazetted areas. For instance, National Authority, Forest Authority property, we find somebody is claiming sand because he's been mining sand there.
The value of land remains the same, whether titled or not. What changes is the cost that you use in processing the registration certificate. If this land was good at producing potatoes, whether it has a title or not, it will still give you the best potatoes that's always produced. So if we understand from that perspective, what does land as an asset mean to people? What value do you attach to it? So the narrative of this is my land, this is lease, this is what, it shouldn't arise.
Article 26(1)(b) of the Constitution provides that the compulsory taking of possession or acquisition of property is made under law, which makes provision for prompt payment of fair and adequate compensation prior to the taking of possession or acquisition of the property. Uganda and Tanzania in May 2017 signed the intergovernmental agreement that binds the two governments on the pipeline project with a specific clause detailing land rights framework, including fair, transparent, legally enforceable and clear terms in favor of the project availability of land rights and integrity for the pipeline system, allowing uninhibited implementation of the project and allowing lenders to take legal, valid and enforceable first priority security. In Madudu sub-county, Mubende district, the story of compensation bears the same parallels.
They promise to value our properties and pay us, but we don't know what is going on.
We were not given any money. They brought documents which we signed, and since then we have not seen them. We don't know how much money we shall be paid.
This man who can't read and write displays documents he was handed to by officials in charge of compensation.
Some of us asked them questions. For instance, the pipeline will go through the middle of my land and I can't do much on the land. They said, we shall find a way to compensate you. We asked when shall we value our properties. They responded that this will be sorted. It's now over a year when we last heard from them.
In the past, compulsory land acquisition in the Albertine sub-region has often elicited flack from locals as a result of low compensation rates. Emmanuel Mutaizibwa, NTV.